Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and everyone. Welcome to another installment of LinkedIn Live. My name is Brian Galicia. I host this LinkedIn Live event for ISV Connect every Monday, 8 o'clock. And we always rotate it around with amazing partners and independent software vendors to talk about all the things they do in relationship to the Microsoft partner ecosystem. So it's a pleasure and honor to welcome the Glympse and Joe to the stage. And before I make an introduction to him, let me kind of set the tone for how these events go if you've never watched one of these before. So during the event, we'd love to hear, where you're watching from. So if you're watching from, let's say, England or Denmark or the Netherlands or even Guatemala or Brazil, we'd love to have you in the LinkedIn feed. Just make a quick comment to say, hey, where you're watching from, and we'll do a quick shout out because we always love to see the broad reach that these events have that we do every Monday. And then also during the conversation I have with Joe from Glympse, we'd love to actually have you ask questions. So if there's something of interest that catches your attention, like, oh my gosh, I'd love to ask that question live and get some feedback either from me or from Joe, feel free to type it in the LinkedIn window and I'll catch it and I'll be able to post it up on the feed, and Joe will see it too. And then we'll be able to talk about it in real time in dialogue. Also, during the event, if you choose not to just answer something, but if there's something of interest in the dialogue that you're finding, wow, that's super valuable, we'd love to appreciate either a like or a support or using one of the emoji icons at the bottom, just to engage in the conversation so it gives us a quick indication that the content is relevant and resonating. So that being said, welcome Joe to the ISV Connect Live stage. Thanks for making the time on a Monday.
Absolutely, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, so it's great. So let's talk about, Joe, a little bit of background yourself. What do you do at Glympse? And then, of course, the tradition that I always have with all my guests every Monday is, if you could share, what's one thing that does not exist on your LinkedIn profile today that you would love to have the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm not sure if it's going to be something I'd love the audience to know, but it's something that's definitely not on my LinkedIn profile. So I'm Vice President of Strategic Business Development for Glympse, and I come from a long background of retail, technology-based solutions for retail. So that's where the space that I've played in and worked with a number of retailers as well as technology-based solutions over the years, and getting things up in place to solve for critical needs in the retail space. So that's a little bit about what I do or who I am. In terms of the one thing that's not on my LinkedIn profile, let's just say it is something I'd like everybody to know. I am a huge weather nerd. So I am a junkie for really getting into the weeds around how the weather works, what's going on. I look at multiple locations where family lives, people I know around the world and so on. And it's definitely a passion of mine, almost to the extent that, when you get hindsight, if I could, I'd go back and say, I should have went to meteorology or went into meteorology in college and chosen perhaps a different path. So it's definitely a big passion of mine and certainly not something you'd ever glean from my LinkedIn profile.
Oh my God! Well, that's amazing. I've never had someone say that before, and I can imagine you right now if we had a green screen behind you and you're pointing to the different weather areas like Al Roker does on the morning show.
Absolutely. And I like to get into the weeds as much as I can in terms of actually looking at the system maps and what's creating the weather you're looking at on the forecast and so on.
Yeah, well, gosh, if you lived in the Northwest, Joe, you can imagine our meteorologists have an interesting time because they have to do with all these weather patterns because of the Puget Sound. So you never know. Sometimes when they're trying to make the best guess, is it going to be sunny today? Is it going to be overcast? Is it going to be rainy? So many things play into things. So it's super hard here because of the Puget Sound, where we have a body of water and then the mountains around us that creates all these different things. So
anyway, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So let's do a quick call out, a shout out, a roll call. Thanks for everyone making some commentary here. So Jeremy, thanks for dialing in from Canada. So we always have Canadians joining. So thank you to our friends up north. We have Cami from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So just not too far away from you. Joe in the central region. We have Paula watching from Mexico, so that's always nice too. That's where I'd love to be right now. I think all of us would love to be in some sunny weather in Mexico. We have David from the great Big Apple in New York. So thanks, David. I know David personally, so thanks for making the time, David, to watch our show on Monday. And then we also have Ryan from Minneapolis. And of course, he's also been, I love his comment, meteorologist, you love it, Joe, because it's sunny and 80 today.
There you go.
That's great. So thank you, team, for people who are watching live. So continue to keep it coming. So let's just get started. So Joe, of course, I know what Glympse does. And of course, just in the nature, there's someone on my team that actually came from Glympse and joined the Microsoft ecosystem team. But give a little bit about background of what does Glympse do and what are the outcomes that we solve together in the process.
Yeah, thanks for that lead in. So at the center of everything Glympse does is creating an optimum customer experience through location-based intelligence. So that's kind of at the center, but then it really, of course, goes well beyond that in terms of a platform that provides ultimate visibility in terms of a curbside type experience, which is what our most recent Connect with Microsoft work enabled. And a curbside experience, it gives full visibility to that store of who's coming, when are they coming, what's their live ETA, have they varied from that ETA in terms of coming directly to the store. But then also, in addition to the visibility, it gives the store the ability to get coordination and operational efficiency on the back end as well, right? Because you can now see who's coming, when, what orders are getting filled. You can also then get that last mile optimized so that you can do a little bit more just in time, and you can make sure that that curbside delivery or pickup is being done in a couple of minutes or less versus 10 minutes if somebody just happens to walk up and call the store, drive up and call the store, in kind of like an old school or low tech environment that we're certainly trying to get people past as well, and working with a lot of customers. And then the third part is proactive communication. So the platform really then also allows for omni-channel communication capability and also being proactive, right? So not only can we enable, voice, chat, SMS, and so on, we can be proactive and identify when there may be little trouble spots and prompt or push notifications to prompt that communication as well, keeping that customer experience really smooth, really likable for that customer, and efficient for both the customer and the retailer themselves.
No, great background. I think about like you and me personally, and me specifically, how many times in this new, I don't know if I call it a new normal, but just a normal that we're all thrust into, whether it be groceries or electronics or even food. The fact that you can do it on your phone and then all of a sudden drive up and they know that you're in the stall and they know this is the car that they need to drop off in. What's your preference of, do they want to hand it to you? Do they want to put it in the trunk? And also the security, the validation is like, is actually this the right person that I should be giving this to? And I love how you frame it up, the last mile solutions, because even though the pandemic thrust us into it, I think these are one of the unique things that will just stay. Like even once we get back to normal, it's the convenience and the ability to do that. And so that's great. So give us a little sense of what has the experience been like? So meaning for Glympse, when Glympse made the decision to actually be part of the Microsoft ecosystem, how's that been like? And then also talk a little bit about that experience as we think about pre and during pandemic. Like how did that shift change everything you just talked about? How did that shift change the mindset of what you were doing with us, but also the things that you started to see with our joint customers?
Yeah, that's a great build and lead in. So I'm going to step forward a little bit first and talk a little bit about how the pandemic has affected, where things are today, as well as how what precipitated us working further and deeper with the Microsoft team. A lot of what we see today via the pandemic aren't necessarily new things, but what the pandemic really did in a lot of people's perspective is it accelerated paths that things were already on. So you certainly a year and a half ago had people using e-commerce, they were using mobile for purchasing. They certainly were doing some curbside and of course delivery as well. But what the pandemic did was it put this massive accelerator on it because it put necessity now into the consumer's behavior and into their life. And so they were somewhat compelled now to order things online and order things through mobile and use curbside as a pickup or last mile option because they didn't have any other choice, right? They were either they couldn't go in the store or they didn't want to go into the store. And so, like I said, these were not new behaviors per se, but we put this massive accelerator on them. So where we might have been on a 5-year growth curve, we just skipped it. We just went from where it was to now where we might have been 5 years from now. And because we put together great solutions like what Microsoft and Glympse do together, people, they're not going to unadopt it. They're going to continue to use these capabilities because it fits their lifestyle. It makes it easier and more enjoy, and it makes it a better joy for them to actually adopt these behaviors and get these types of deliveries and last mile fulfillments.
Yeah, great. So a little bit about engagement, Joe, on like the experience of Glympse actually being part of the Microsoft ecosystem, being listed in the marketplace, and the exposure and the engagements you have with the Microsoft organization, or even our partner network, because of course how big Microsoft is, and not just the seller opportunity of going after these joint opportunities with our end customers, but also the partners that you get exposed to because of the implementations they're doing that can potentially pull in a great ISV like yourself that can help with this final mile curbside scenario and solution.
Yeah, the experience of working with Microsoft, I think, has been great for my whole team. Right, we had opportunities pretty early on, in terms of quite some time ago, to work together on a couple key client partners. Initially, it was in the field service fulfillment or delivery side of the equation. We built some great solutions there, worked together very well, and then we continued to collaborate and look at how do we continue to meet the needs in the marketplace as they are today, but then also how are they evolving? Where is this going? I think that led us down a curbside path as well to say, hey, here's an emerging, it's always been here, but it's emerging and growing, and it's a necessity now. How do we partner together even further to make a fantastic e-commerce order management system through curbside fulfillment type solution? Between Microsoft and Glympse, we really put that together well. I mean, together as partners, we sit at such a valuable part of the e-commerce ecosystem, right? There's a dynamic that goes across, from ordering to order management, like I mentioned, up until the fulfillment. And together, we really provide such a great turnkey solution overall for a retail customer or partner to be able to execute at a high level on those things in really a very turnkey fashion.
Yeah, thank you. So before we get to the next question, let me do another quick shout out to Denise. So thanks, Denise, for calling out. And again, I love the fact Denise. That when you talk about meteorology, you now have a trend of people talking about the weather in the location. I might have to add that to.
Open that up now.
Yeah, now you opened up the floodgates where people are going to be posting out what the weather is like in their region. So thanks, Janice, for joining. And then just a quick recap. I have Joe from Glympse, and we're just talking about final mile solutions, their experience, and what does it mean to kind of be part of the Microsoft ecosystem and the joint value that we can deliver to end customers in a commerce scenario with curbside pickup and all these different scenarios. And so if there are people listening, if you have a question, feel free to, again, put it in the commentary window, and I'll give us an opportunity in the time we have together to ask the question. So Joe, give us a little bit about, you've talked about kind of setting the stage for what challenges we solve. What are some examples that you have come across in the work that we've done together of these outcomes that we're solving to the end customers, whether it be a retailer or someone? What has that been like for what you've seen so far in the work we've done together to what the customer stories are?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned a minute ago, we started working together early on the field service or delivery of field service side of the equation. We worked with partners like Goodman Network, Singtel, and really came together to provide them an excellent kind of front to back field service type of engagement. Now we've been talking curbside a lot today, but in a field service application, it's really more the delivery of a service or a technician call or any type of application from a field standpoint. So it's a delivery of that service, but similar type of needs go into that in terms of from the order management to how do we track when that delivery of service is coming and is going to arrive at the customer, to tracking what services are going to be rendered, proof of service, capture of what kind of services were done that day. And then again, along with that visibility is also then the communication tools. And sometimes in a service application, that can become even more paramount from a communication standpoint, not only on the enabling communication, but being proactive about it. If that service technician is going to be running late or their appointment schedule has gotten jumbled, they'll be able to proactively communicate that so that the customer doesn't feel like they're twisting in the wind at all, or so they are always aware and they're comfortable with, okay, this is how this is going to work, what's happening, when it's going to happen, and so on. And so we've had some great success working together across that line.
That's great. Because I can imagine just that experience of when we first start out, when I got exposed to Glympse, that Uberization of knowing when the field service technician, similar to back in the day when we used to have the ability to go somewhere and jump in a car and know exactly where your driver is. That same thing with a technician standpoint, but then expanding that to your point with the curbside scenario of seeing, okay, when is a potential customer driving up to the store and how close proximity they are, so that a picker or someone in the store could actually be prepared to say, okay, here's the person's goods or services we need to deliver to them, and be able to at the ready when they're actually out there, they're not waiting 20 minutes for someone to then come out and go do that. That's fantastic. So give me a sense for when we think about that scenario. What does a customer look like before they choose Glympse or choose this? What do they have in place? Is there something that you think about it when someone's not doing that? What have you observed and seen? Because sometimes we have, of course, potential customers listening on this phone call that might be thinking, "Gosh, I have the same scenario, and this is what we're using." Could you give a sense for what is if someone's not doing this modernization of this last final mile and curbside pickup, what have you typically seen with what customers? How do they do it without this automation, without this great capability?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question, and we certainly are fortunate. We engage with a lot of retailers on an ongoing basis that become partners, and as well as just on a consultative basis, working with them. And so let's just step back one more time into that background of the pandemic accelerating the necessity of things like curbside. And so what it pushed a lot. So a year ago, there may have been at least 60-70% less retailers that had any type of curbside offering. So what a lot of them were forced to do is to somewhat cobble together a combination of operationally driven and low tech or semi-low tech type capabilities. So it's a little bit more of, you've got the e-commerce, front-end e-commerce on your website, you've got an order management system to some degree, but then it's really more of an old school tech in terms of, well, just drive to the store and call us when you get here. Which certainly can work, but as we've been talking about, the challenge there is now the store is somewhat caught unprepared, even just for that one order. They don't necessarily know that Brian was arriving to the store or even coming to get his order at this time, right? So now Brian's here, now they scramble. Where's his order? How do I find it? Where did we catalog it? Was it all picked and fulfilled already on the operational side? And then how do we get it out to them? And as you mentioned, then that leads to, what is that, a 10, 15, 20-minute experience? I mean, you certainly hear people talk about the nightmares of like, oh, I thought I was going to get this great curbside pickup. I just swing by on the way to pick up the kids from school. And then it took me 20 minutes and I was late and the kids are waiting on the streets and so on. We take all that variability out of it, both from a customer satisfaction, but then also that operational experience. And so we're just talking about one customer pickup order. And then the greater capability that Glympse provides is the ability for that store now to see all of their orders, to look at it like an arrivals page to see what orders am I expecting in the next hour? And what do all of these orders, if I have 50 orders coming in, what does that look like? Who's on their way? What are their ETAs? And then I can make sure that I've got those orders most ready to go and staged in an area that makes it easy for it to bring it out to the customer, right? And then it's the detail as well. So we know exactly when the customer arrived, exactly where they're parked. We know what vehicle they're in and so on. Do they want to put in their trunk? Do you want to put in the back seat? How do you want to receive this? As well as you've got purchase verification already. So you're typically not going through an environment where they're showing a driver's license or other things like that. We already know this is Brian. He's getting this order. We're ready to go. We bring it out and it's a 2-minute fulfillment.
Yeah, no, what a great scenario you shared, Joe. Because I can imagine someone doing that low tech environment and the scale of a call center that then they have to staff up and all the nightmare that would be involved in that. And it's like a mini supply chain that you've created with this scenario to make the experience so frictionless for the customer. And this is apropos because Jeremy asked a really good question. So thanks, Jeremy, for asking this question. So we've been talking about like the customer end benefits, like the parent who's swinging by, and what a great example, because we're all, I think most of us who are listening to this phone call are probably parents and working parents to that extent. But how does a corporation benefit? And that's such a great question that Jeremy asked. So can you kind of share a little bit about, okay, if we're providing such a great experience to the end customer or the buyer, how does that corporation benefit from a scenario like this?
Yeah, there's so many ways that the company or the retailer or whoever that client partner is, there's so many ways that they benefit. And a couple of them we've already been talking about in terms of the ability to see more of a macro level and obtain efficiencies from it, right? So they can see the arrivals for all the totality of who's coming, when they're coming, and so on and so on. along with the communication, lets them be more operationally efficient on the back end. When we get into more of, like you mentioned, Brian, a second ago, and you start talking about call center, the ability to eliminate calls in both retail as well as in a field service environment, the ability to reduce those number of calls at a call center level, that's direct dollars. We have client partners that have shared with us, wow, you guys save us millions of dollars by reducing these call center calls coming through and then having to re-dispatch them out to field people and so on. But even at just a store level, if anyone's worked or spent time in a retail environment, they're not necessarily sitting by the phone like an operator. And so the more calls that are coming into a store just creates more mayhem and less efficiency. And so eliminating those calls for the most part, not only through them being able to track and know when people are arriving and be prepared for them, but also then the other omni-channel communication ability that we provide in terms of the ability to do SMS and chat and have that be very available to store people regardless of what device they're using. So Glympse makes it capable for a store personnel they can be using their own mobile phone and log in through a Glympse app that allows them to be able to see and communicate and claim orders and so on. Or they could be on a Zebra device, which is also a partner of Glympse. It could be any type of device they want. We really make this available so that there's great efficiency, but that too eliminates calls, makes things more efficient. It's a great benefit to the company, and not only a curbside, but also a field service or regular delivery environment.
Yeah, what a great scenario solution, Joe, because you make that experience for even the organization, no matter what technology or communication vehicle their employees are comfortable with or what technology they have, because we all interact in different ways, whether it be we prefer a phone call or we like an SMS or a text message or a chat experience. People are all different, and being able to provide that ability for not just the end corporation, but the end customer to experience whatever communication vehicle they find the most comfortable and benefit. That's great. So before we wrap up, I know we have typically we try to do these within 30-minute increments. If there are any questions that people have who are listening, feel free to put it in the window, and we have a little bit of time to ask the question to Joe. But as we kind of wrap up this conversation, Joe, how would people kind of learn more? Like someone listening to this, if they're either a partner that goes, gosh, I do a lot of implementations with a lot of retailers and we never have even brought this up, or if they're an end customer and we potentially have potential buyers that are listening to this going, oh, I'm a retailer and I could use something like this. How would they learn more? What are some of the things that they can do to learn more about the capabilities and all the benefits you described?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways that people can certainly learn more, and we certainly encourage people to explore and learn more. Maybe the most obvious is anyone's certainly welcome to engage with me. Reach out to me direct through LinkedIn, however it may be. We're always available to take people deeper, go further into what we do and how it works with Microsoft. So that's certainly a great way to go out. Our extender is available through AppSource with Microsoft. And also there's a live link, I think Brian just put it up on the screen there, that's available through this session that you can click on, and you can see the availability of the extender through AppSource, as well as a lot more information about who Glympse is, how it works, and connectivity. Beyond that, I also encourage people, go to glympse.com. Our website is fantastic, and it'll certainly give people even a more robust view of who we are, what we do, and how it works, and why it's important.
Yeah, that's great. I apologize if there's some background noise. The challenge of working from home, it sounds like my neighbors has their landscapers behind the scenes when they're blowing something. So I apologize if there's background noise. We do have one more question. Jeremy, thanks again for asking another great question here. So SMS can be expensive. So that scenario that you talked about with texting, like what are the rates and what does that even look like? That's a good question. I don't even know how that would even work. So what would that look like depending on, you can imagine if you have hundreds and hundreds of people come into a store and you just say, okay, I need to text all these people updates and hey, I'm here, etc. Can you talk about the competitive rates question?
Oh, absolutely. So certainly the short answer to the question is absolutely we have competitive rates. So Glympse, we're fortunate to sit in a position because of all the partners that we have and different business use cases that we're solving for that involve communication and different modes of communication. So the short answer is yes, we have extremely competitive SMS rates. And so it makes it very affordable for customers. It doesn't tend to be a barrier to them at all. Now, that being said, a lot of retailers that are working at scale, they also already have SMS packages that they're utilizing for them. And we are very fluid and flexible with that. So we don't necessarily invoke that you have to use a Glympse-driven SMS. You can utilize your own, and that too can make it very easy and seamless for a customer and cost effective. But it doesn't really tend to be a barrier to how we do things at all.
Yeah, that's great. So as we wrap up, any other last minute comments or things you'd like to share to this LinkedIn audience before we wrap up the session today?
Nothing real top of mind. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, for being a part. I love the comments. Jeremy, thanks for the questions. I love everybody checking in and telling me about their weather. It's been great. It's been great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Joe. So as we wrap up, team, like again, for people listening, we do this event every Monday. So next week, we actually have another ISV that does something totally different than Glympse, WalkMe, that does digital adoption types of scenarios. And so stay tuned if you'd like to hear from another ISV doing something totally different from what Glympse does. Stay tuned, and you can watch this again next week at 8 o'clock. But thank you again, Joe. I want to personally thank you and Glympse for the partnership, the investment in the Microsoft ecosystem, and you personally from taking time out of your Monday morning to actually share a point of view with us as a Microsoft global team in this type of medium and scenario.
Thanks, Brian. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. Continue to be well, be safe. Hopefully, crossing fingers that in a few more months, we will all be hopefully back to normal. And also, Joe, we'll be able to have an opportunity to actually meet face-to-face versus just virtually. So
wouldn't that be great?
That's right. That's right. Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a great Monday. Have a great week. We'll talk soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.